Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's meeting of South Oxfordshire District Council's Cabinet. My name is Maggie Philipova Rivers, and I am chairing this committee. I'll move us on to Chair's announcements, and I wanted to very briefly say that about an hour ago I was involved in a road traffic accident, so I am not fully with my faculties. So if at any point I feel unwell, I will be handing over to Tommy Morgan. But I couldn't, for the life of me, miss such an exciting cabinet meeting. So here I am. So moving on to apologies. Becky, in the interest of time, if that's okay with you, we'll just register the two councillors that have sent apologies, and I will let you take the attendance without actually doing one roll call, because we do have a very heavy agenda. If that's okay with you.
Yes, of course. I believe we have apologies from Councillor Peter Barker and Anne-Marie Simpson.
Thank you very much. Minutes to adopt and sign as a correct record the minutes of the cabinet meeting held on the 16th of April and 14th of June. I shall be signing those later. They looked fine to me. Then
I'll propose that correctly.
yeah, those. Yeah,
Are we happy to take the confidential as well?
Yes, if anybody wants to discuss any of those, we may need to go into a session, but it sounds like
they were
fine.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Thank
fine.
you.
Do remind me to sign them. I will need extra support today. Next week. Okay, great. So on to declaration of interest. To receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable interest and non-registrable interest, or any conflicts of interest in respect of the items on the agenda for this meeting. Do we have any? I actually was wondering if the MO can pop up, and I actually, as part of my day job, I have come across, I don't formally or in any financial way work with the Belong organisation that I think will come up later on. So I just thought I'd pop that on the record. I think I was interviewed by them at one point, so we cross paths, but it's nothing other than that. I am aware of their existence as part of my day job.
So that doesn't sound like any greater exposure to the organisation than anyone else would have. So it doesn't sound like it is an interest, leader. If it were an interest at all, and you wanted to take the most cautious line, you can simply declare it as an other interest, and then you can continue to speak and debate and even vote on the item. That's probably the most cautious approach.
Yeah,
is probably
I might just let colleagues vote on that one, and just to be extra cautious, I might just recuse myself just to be on the safe side of that.
Thank you, Leah.
Item. Okay, thank you very much. Any other ones? I see none. Moving on to urgent business. None, other than what I've already said. So we are on to public participation, and I'm really thrilled to say that we have quite a lot of participation today. We have Councillor James Barlow. We were to have Councillor Snowden, but Becky will read out a statement. Councillor Sarah James, she is not an SODC councillor, but she's speaking on an item pertaining to a joint procurement strategy. Likewise for Councillor Sally Whiteman, not a South Oxfordshire councillor. And we've got Councillor Bennett, whom we are very glad to have to speak on a couple of items, which is 10 and 13. So I'll just take them in that order. Councillor Barlow, you were going to speak on item 8, but also you were going to speak on a couple of other items. Is that no longer the case?
I believe he was going to speak separately on the recommendations. He was going to introduce the recommendation from joint scrutiny later in the agenda.
Yes. Is that correct?
My understanding was I was going to speak on a couple of issues on item 6 as part of public participation. Then yes, I'm just bringing up the joint scrutiny recommendations on the waste and street cleansing vehicle selection and procurement policy.
Okay, so you have 6 minutes, one in your capacity as co-chair of joint scrutiny, and you've got 3 minutes for that, and then 3 to speak on other items that you have
Oh, should we
indicated.
do it all in one go then?
What do we?
Because I was thinking I'd do it separately because you can hear all the public participation first.
Yeah, let's do it separately. Okay, let's do it separately.
Forgive me, Chair, not telling you how to do your job.
No, that's fine. I'm very happy to be told today.
And I'm sorry to hear of your accident. Yeah, I hope you don't have any lasting effects of it.
Yeah, other than being a little traumatized, I think I will be fine. Okay, so we shall time you. We do ask you all to keep within your 3 minutes on, in your case, 2 times 3, because we do have a very heavy agenda.
I'm sure I can do that. Okay, so I wanted to speak on community cohesion and the land trust, the community housing seed fund. So firstly on community cohesion, can I thank Councillor Heritage for her comprehensive response to an email I sent her, I think the back end of last week. I really appreciate what you've written back to me. It's answered a lot of the questions I had. I'd just like to kind of affirm the efforts really. I was really glad to see that SODC will partner with Belong, who's already been mentioned. I understand that due to their experience elsewhere, they really will engage with all parts of the community and hopefully create an action plan with us to enable communities to come together. And particularly the thing I was really keen on, which some of you will understand, is the kind of coming together to work together and sit down and have the really difficult conversations, those that can spark polarisation and lead to, as we've seen over the past months, verbal threat and indeed in some cases physical violence. So really glad to see that the development of strategy will not shy away from having those. I think, Georgina, as you put it in your email to me, the difficult conversations across the communities, so that we really do develop relevant local community action plans that benefit all residents, including those who I think, which I'm really keen on, that those who currently feel really left behind and excluded and perhaps don't feel that they're being listened to at all. So thank you for that. That's all I want to say to that. And then on the housing seed fund, I asked for some feedback from some of the people I know in the community housing sector. And one of the things they came up with was that they were keen that SODC considers using an infrastructure support organisation, perhaps to mitigate one of the risks that was highlighted, the risk of funding awards being delayed, given quite often the timeliness that's important in these situations. They were talking about an organisation who has specialist knowledge and a track record of delivering funding programmes for other local authorities, so that they can perhaps deliver the programme on SODC's behalf. I understand, though, that SODC has worked alongside Community First Oxfordshire in developing this fund, so I hope that those concerns are going to be mitigated, because we know that CFO have got a really good record in this. That's all I wanted to offer. I'm really glad to see these things going ahead, and I'll talk to you in a bit about the Waston Street cleansing selection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With, I think, 40 seconds to spare. Great. So should
Was that
we?
4 or 40?
40. Very good. Should we go with the written statement now, or should no? Actually, let's not. Let's go at the end. Yeah. Okay. So next on my list, I have Councillor Sarah James from the Vale of White Falls. And thank you kindly for sending some notes in advance as well. They were duly noted by myself, but I'm sure others.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and sorry to hear about your accident. Take care of yourself. So I'm here today. I'm a Vale councillor, but I'm here because I'd like to talk to you about the waste vehicle procurement policy, and of course that affects both districts. And I sent both cabinets my comments by email, the ones that you've seen. So this is a vital policy because it's such a large procurement, and because it affects a key service that all residents use, and because the waste service is now the largest part of our carbon emissions. Both councils have made action on climate change a priority with 2030 targets for net zero, and a majority of people in the UK say that climate change is an important issue for them and they want to see action. For people frightened by our worsening climate, for themselves or their children or grandchildren, anxiety is compounded if they can't see anyone taking leadership or anyone with a plan for what to do. And this is why our council's targets are so important. And that's why being seen to have and to follow a plan to meet the targets is so important. I really welcome the amendments to the policy in the updated paper in response to Joint Scrutiny Committee's thoughtful suggestions, and I ask you to consider 2 further amendments to make sure that this policy offers the best chance of delivering lasting carbon reductions. So firstly, I'm proposing that you just move around the principles that are there. The guiding principle of reducing carbon emissions is then placed first. And that's because the service and financial requirements are non-negotiable, and we all recognise that. However, reducing carbon emissions is a choice, and this is where you show your leadership. And if you lead with that principle, you'll set yourselves up to achieve as much as possible towards it. And the other requirements, statutory service and the financial requirements, remain absolute. And I think the difference there is one of framing. It's whether we're looking at the status quo and saying, what do we do from here? Or whether we look at where we want to go, what the vision is, and push for how far we can get towards that. And secondly, I would like to see that assessing total cost of ownership is explicitly included in the implementation of the policy, because that's so important for the full impact on the capital and the revenue budgets. And it is a huge procurement. Last week was way too hot. It was unpleasant and scary. And we really need to see hope and leadership on climate from our elected representatives. And I think these tweaks to this policy today could really help you to deliver that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Does anybody have any questions of clarification for Councillor James? So we will be addressing some of the points that you have made as part of our deliberations. Do say it is the kind of first meeting item following the recommendations and updates from other committees, so do stay on the line. But equally, if you have to go, I'm sure we can catch up with it online later. Thank you. So next on my list, I have yes, Councillor Whiteman. Charlie, are you with us?
She's online.
I am. Sorry, I just had to pull over. Sorry to hear about your incident, Maggie. Hope you're feeling okay.
And you take care. I'm glad you have pulled over. That is a good sign. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So, Chair, thanks for allowing me to speak. Although I represent the Vale of White Horse, this is a joint policy for our shared waste and street cleansing service, and the decisions made today will directly affect the residents I represent. And obviously, we've got Vale Cabinet tomorrow. That's why I want to address your Cabinet this evening. Firstly, I want to acknowledge that the policy has improved since the June draft and joint scrutiny, and I welcome the additional wording that now explicitly prioritises electric vehicles where they meet operational and financial criteria, strengthens the requirement for ethical sourcing of HVO, and makes it clear that HVO is a transitional fuel rather than a long-term solution. These are positive changes, and I thank officers and members for listening to some of the concerns that have been raised at scrutiny. However, despite these improvements, I remain concerned that Cabinet has not yet been provided with sufficient technical and financial evidence to adopt this policy with confidence. This is not about being pro-electric or anti-HVO. As someone who spent more than 20 years working as an automotive engineer, including powertrain development and vehicle electrification, my concern is about the quality of the evidence supporting a procurement strategy that will shape our fleet for the next decade. I can't see a comprehensive total cost of ownership assessment. Members have shown vehicle purchasing prices, but not the lifetime cost of fuel maintenance services, reliability, downtime, residual value, financing options, or the long-term return on investment. These are standard commercial evaluations in fleet procurement and would sit alongside the capital costs before such a significant decision could be made. I also believe that HVO has an important role to play, but primarily only as a means of extending the life of suitable existing vehicles. While we continue to invest in electrification and infrastructure, I'm less convinced that purchasing another generation of combustion engine vehicles is the long-term investment without a strong business case. I'd ask Cabinet to consider introducing a transparent fleet replacement matrix. Members should be able to see exactly why each vehicle is being replaced. Is it age, excessive maintenance costs, increased downtime, poor reliability, or simply because it's reached a tick box of a predetermined replacement age? These are very different reasons, and they should lead to a very different procurement decision. Finally, I remain unconvinced that members have been presented with a route-by-route operational analysis that demonstrates where electric vehicles genuinely cannot operate today, such as duty cycles, and where a phased mixed fleet approach would be or could be already delivered tomorrow. Chair, I do not believe that we should spend millions of pounds of public money simply because this is the way it's always been done. We should invest based on evidence, long-term value for money, and the best return for our residents. One of the greatest strengths of local government is that councillors bring professional expertise from many different backgrounds. We're not all career politicians. We've got engineers, accountants, teachers, NHS staff, planners, business leaders, academics, all around this chamber, that expertise should be embraced to strengthen decisions, particularly on complex technical issues such as this. I therefore urge Cabinet not to see this as a choice between diesel, HVO or electric, but as an opportunity to strengthen the evidence base. I believe this policy would benefit from further work on whole life cost modelling, financing options, fleet replacement criteria and operational analysis before committing to shape our services, finances and environmental performance well into the 2030s. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. With 1 second to spare. Well done. Thank you. Same as Councillor James. So you can listen in or indeed watch back our deliberations, and we will attempt to address some of your questions. But I think I have a question for you, Councillor Whiteman, if you're still there. If you haven't driven off. Councillor Rawlins.
My only question, Sally, on your point was you talking about the reasons to renew. And as you will know, procurement has to take place quite a long time before you actually see the vehicle in the yard. So that was really my only question. There has to be an element of prediction here.
Do I have the right to reply, Chair? Or
Yes.
Question,
okay.
It didn't sound like a question.
It didn't sound like a question, but yeah, I completely understand that, Councillor Rawlings. But without the data to understand what that fleet currently looks like. So, for example, if you've got an ICE vehicle that currently has a 60% downtime rate, then yes, absolutely, that should be planned for on the 18-month, 24-month ratio of replacements. But if you've got vehicles that are sitting at the 85% usage mark, you can make with data, and this is the big thing, right? Data allows you to make decisions, right? Where that data comes from and how good that data is allows you to look at all the things surrounding fleet age. Unfortunately, a lot of this data isn't provided particularly well. I'm not talking just about the council, I'm talking about general fleet usage across multiple levels of vehicle size and uses. But with some of that data, again, you can very cleverly use things like AI to make predictive analysis over when you can actually be making some of those procurement decisions. So again, I just don't think we're using all the tools in the box, or do we have all the data to be able to make that predictive long-term planning, especially when it comes to fleet. So I'm afraid that, yeah, my experience says that I think we could be doing better. And I said that when I was sat as a cabinet member with waste under me at Vale. I think we can do better.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whiteman. Any more questions for Sally? No, we haven't got any. So moving on to our next public participant, it's Councillor Bennett. Councillor Bennett, do we have you online? He's online.
Good evening.
Evening.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm glad to hear you're okay, Maggie. Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. And just Nick Bennett, just to say, I'm going to speak on the community housing item. I am a trustee of a community land trust, just bringing my background in that to this item, hopefully, rather than not decision makers. Hopefully that's okay for me to talk about it.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this in the past, haven't we, Councillor? So the advice remains the same. You've made effectively an other declaration, so you can carry on as long as you don't drift into areas of decision making. So that's fine.
Thank you very much. Yes. So firstly, thank you, Cabinet, for bringing this forward promptly from following the budget amendment, and it's definitely looks in the ballpark that I would have hoped for, and it's great to see it. And I like the way it's split into two levels: the direct support fund and the business development fund. I think there's probably so the main question would be there are a few things that are put in one bucket or the other, which perhaps might not necessarily belong in that bucket or might vary between different organisations. And in fact, I think there's actually a discrepancy between the policy and the form, because the policy says incorporation would be in business development, but the form has it in the first stage and not the second, and the second form doesn't have it. So I suppose I'm guessing this kind of stuff will slightly come out in the wash during the first round of applications and be tweaked by the head of service, which is fine. But I just suppose some of these things may vary between organisations. Certainly in my CLT, we had to do the incorporation first before we could do anything else. And in terms of the amounts of money, I think up to 10,000 is a useful amount. I think I'm advised that getting to a sort of planning application stage, you're talking more like 60 to 70,000 pounds. So to give it a point of reference, and I mean, obviously we don't have that kind of funding available. And unfortunately, our Section 106 committed fund is currently closed. But the government has recently announced a big community housing fund. So I'm hoping, I guess, as part of this, our officers will signpost groups towards how to apply for that money to actually get projects off the ground. My other main questions were in terms of who's considered to be a community-led housing group. And for example, one question you might be able to answer is SOHA included in this, or are they much too big for what we're talking about? And I know there's other organisations in South Oxford, such as alms houses groups and larger trusts like Henley Housing Trust. So I'm just wondering kind of what the boundaries of the remit are. And also couldn't quite see when it opens, but I'm sure that I guess it'll open as soon as it can. Because I gather the funding gets returned to the budget in April if it's not spent. So I guess the plan is to do it as quickly as possible. I suppose sorry? Yeah, just quickly on the nature fund, because we're talking 200, again, thanks for bringing that forward quickly and partnering it with the climate fund as we discussed. My main comment there was just for the lower end, for the £250, £100,000 grants, it seems quite heavy on admin and criteria. For example, if someone's doing a £250 project, I don't see why they should need to align that with the council's policy objectives. Particularly, it just seems maybe a little heavy-handed. So maybe there could be in the future sort of 2 levels of complexity if you're doing a small scale grant. And just to reference, we do have now quite a lot of policy on nature recovery, and some of them are a bit contradictory. For example, on the council's own land, the policy forbids the creation of wetlands or ponds, which seems a bit. I mean, I understand why, but in this scheme, we're trying to encourage wetlands and ponds. So we might be worth at some point just checking that all of those align.
Those are really excellent points. I think I'm looking at both of the cabinet members. I think maybe they can kind of respond if you are able to stay on. But if not, I think certainly minor tweaks and discrepancies and improvements, I think are something that we can very much take on board and see if we can kind of tweak. I think that the actual recommendations allow for delegate some powers for minor tweaks anyway, so we'll figure it out. But these were really, really helpful, and thank you for pointing this out, and thank you very much for the ideas. They came through as part of budget setting. It is some of the amendments that we accepted, and I'm really glad to be through the path. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks,
we are going now to go to Becky, who is going to read Councillor Snowden's statement because he was not able to be with us this evening. Becky, of course.
So I'm reading this on behalf of Councillor Snowden. So, Chair and Cabinet members, firstly, I give my apologies for not being able to attend in person. Regarding agenda item 8, I want to make a brief comment on this report from the perspective of scrutiny. I fully appreciate the operational challenges our waste service faces and recognise officers have undertaken a significant amount of work. However, this is a procurement policy that will influence decisions involving many millions of pounds of public money over the coming years, so it is right that members ask searching questions before it is approved. At scrutiny, we heard some thoughtful contributions, particularly from Councillor Sally Whiteman, whose professional experience in vehicle engineering and fleet electrification brought valuable technical insight to the discussion. These questions raised were not ideological, they're about evidence, whole life costs, route sustainability, infrastructure planning, and ensuring that all realistic options have been properly evaluated. Good scrutiny isn't about delaying decisions for the sake of it, it's about making sure decisions are based on the strongest possible evidence. I hope Cabinet has reflected carefully on those points before adopting a policy that will shape the Council's fleet for many years to come. Regarding agenda item 9, I'm pleased to see this report finally reaching Cabinet, although I can't help observing that the Council unanimously agreed my motion back in December with a request for recommendations within 3 months. It's taken rather longer than that. I welcome the principle of providing additional support to local businesses, and I recognise the important role that pubs play in our communities. However, my motion deliberately referred to the wider hospitality sector, including restaurants, cafes, and small independent venues, many of which continue to face exactly the same financial pressures. The report explains why officers believe a pub-focused scheme is the most practical option, but I'd be grateful if the Cabinet member could explain why those other hospitality businesses named in the motion have effectively fallen into scope, and whether any further support is being considered for them. I hope this is the first step rather than the final word, because our independent hospitality businesses, whatever form they may take, remain vital to the economy and communities of South Oxfordshire. Thank you.
Oh, excellent. Well read within the time limits. Right. So this is now we're finished with our public participation. I'm eager to get on to the next item, which is recommendations and updates from other committees. We have them in front of us. They are from joint scrutiny. Just to say that many of us did attend that meeting and listened to the deliberations, although it is helpful to have them set out in front of us. And I will ask Councillor Barlow who will introduce them. He will introduce them. Okay, thank you very much.
Would you like me to start?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So as co-chair, I'd just like to offer the following about the waste and street cleansing vehicle selection and procurement policy. I appreciate there have been some changes to it since joint scrutiny, and I thank officers and cabinet members for that. And it does seem that given what we recommended, there's still not quite enough that has been changed, if I read it correctly, in the context of the recommendations. Committee will continue to reinforce that the policy needs to really demonstrate front and centre alignment with the Council's carbon reduction priorities and make that really, really strong. It's really important as well that the policy doesn't effectively force a particular procurement decision, such as for internal combustion engines, by having a policy that doesn't make other options possible. And the key point of this is really that the whole life cost data absolutely need to be included as a key criterion. As many of you know, because you're online on this item, we discussed it at length last week at joint scrutiny, but then somehow in the 35-degree heat, perhaps driven by 120 years worth of internal combustion engines emissions, we somehow managed to leave it off the list that came to you officially. But I want to restate that, and you've heard that from other speakers today, that the whole life data cost really need whole life cost data need to be included as a key criterion. Similarly, the regular route optimization that allows different questions to allow different answers being able to be done frequently, as discussed at scrutiny. For example, the minimising the number of vehicles may preclude a wiser solution, and it's good to see that that has been removed. And we know from evidence from other local authorities that a mixed fleet is possible, even in a rural area such as ours, by doing that route optimization, taking into account the different routings. And then I'd say also that the concerns about HVO remain. We must stress that this really needs to be kept as at most a transitional solution, and we welcome the fact that ICEs can't be, they need to be signed off by Cabinet. Because we know that buying HVOs basically tells vehicle manufacturers to keep producing diesel engines rather than perhaps innovate as much as we really need them to do. We do need to learn from the past, from the current fossil fuel burning problem, and for us to lead as a council by encouraging new non-ICE demand signals, which currently at the moment means EVs, would be brilliant. And again, the consideration of whole life cost data in that will be really helpful, I think, to broaden that the procurement decisions, as was outlined at length. So please do take these things into account. Right now, I think even the revised policy is not strong enough. So please do take this opportunity to lead, especially during these times of increased heat waves. I think as a final thought, a resident said to me the other day that they'd seen memes to the effect that this will be the coolest summer of the rest of our lives, the coolest summer of the rest of our lives. I find that very sobering, and I'd urge you to please lead tonight with that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Just about within the limit. I actually have a question. I do have a question. I don't know if anybody else has. So one of the things that all councillors that have joined to speak on this item this evening have talked about is the lifetime cost and or benefit of EVs. Personally, I have always thought, and I wonder whether you have any reflections on this, that because obviously as council we carry the capital outlay, that initial cost, whereas our operator effectively benefits or disbenefits of the kind of management and operational costs on an ongoing basis. That separation, and I know that people kind of have very different thoughts on whether that is the correct approach, but nonetheless, it is what we have currently. But that separation actually, especially in the cases with EVs, creates an incentive for BIFA, for our contractor, to actually want to make EV routes work. Do you not agree? Because any savings that they have, and there are savings to be had, we know them. I mean, those of us who use electric cars see those in terms of the cost of charging is much, much lower than fuel. So in a way, it creates the right conditions or the incentive for the operator to actually try and make these work. So how much value do you think then, and by the way, I absolutely agree. I don't think it's a big ask to, even with some assumptions, ask for some assessments in terms of the lifetime cost of EVs. But for me, it's always been the case that if BIFA, who do not have to pay for the vehicles, can make those work, they will, because they benefit from cost savings on an ongoing basis. So are we not already convinced that if the technology is there to enable at least some routes, at least some EVs, we will all make them work?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Maggie, but I'll attempt. I think you're talking about.
I'm trying to say that there is an incentive for our management company to explore and take seriously the possibility of EVs, because they don't carry the initial cost, but they all the benefits to them in the longer term.
But we're not asking them to make the decision about what we procure, are we? We're asking them to manage what we procure. So I guess for us as a council to understand that whole balance of capital and revenue costs, which is standard practice in many fleets. I was working on fleets 15 years ago, and that would be the first thing they do is look at the whole cost. So as you say, the slight artificial separation of those may not be helpful in a way, but I mean, BIFA will make the best out of whatever we buy for them, won't they? To your point, if they're carrying the revenue costs. I guess the key point here for me, if I'm understanding what you're saying, is for SODC to decide to take into account all of that from a carbon point of view as well as a cost point of view. Those things not balance out, but they're both key criteria to take into account because of the carbon reduction priorities and the fact that, as previous speakers and as we discussed in the committee, this has such a significant impact on our net zero targeting, because it's half of our emissions basically, and giving that demand signal for something which is not still using internal combustion engine is rather important here.
Yeah. On those things, you're definitely speaking to the converted. I was trying just to sense whether how there's been a lot of emphasis on doing the lifetime costs, but I feel like that we already agree that if the technology can serve our routes, both our contractors and this council would make it work. So it's just a matter of getting that information prior to the procurement decision to understand whether BIFA can make at least some routes work, which we currently don't know. But I would expect that we would before a decision is actually made.
Sure, I think there's probably two things here. One is reminding ourselves of, front and centre being carbon, at least as strong as financial, given we have that ability to spend capital in a certain way with that in mind. But then that whole piece, I think the thing that committee found very hard was the fact that there weren't any data to share, and it didn't feel like that was being considered at all. It was almost like there was a lot of data around HVOs, but we know there's much, from what people have shared with us and the bit of research that we've done, there are data out there which can do the whole life cost comparing internal combustion engines with EVs. And so you could make a decision on each occasion when the decision needs to be made, knowing full well the impacts in that way. Whereas we didn't feel we had data put in front of us which showed that that was being considered at all. So it's that transparency.
Thank you. And we don't disagree. I think we probably just disagree on when we would expect that information, but we'll pick that up. I've taken too much of the time as chair. I feel like I've had that privilege. Does anybody else have any more questions for James? Oh, can we move on? I see none. Thank you so much for indulging me, especially. So we are moving on to agenda item number 8, which is the item of this evening. Councillor Cooper, would you like to introduce this item, just in the interest of time, and so that we have more time for discussion? We will not be reading out the recommendations. We will be taking them as read, unless we are changing them, in which case we probably should read them in the case of the cohesion strategy. So yeah, over to you.
Right, thank you. And I want to start with some thank yous to many people for all the input we've had on this, since today's speakers, the speakers at scrutiny, the scrutiny input, officers, fellow members, colleagues at APSI as well, who provided very useful information on HVO usage and indeed on electric vehicles in general. So there's been a lot of input to this. My own overall view is that there are so many things changing at the moment. Obviously, the big one is movement to our new depot in Great Paisley. But vehicles, everybody acknowledges that they are still evolving. And of course, we know that the current big problem with EVs is whether they will cope with the distances involved in some of our more distant parts of the districts. And the other point, which actually has just been highlighted by James, by Councillor Barlow, is how much we can do on routing. Personally, I think that's key to a lot of what we might do, because I think there's a general feeling that we would all like to go for more EVs if they can cope. And to that end, we have changed the recommendations slightly. I think probably the thing to do, I will go through. We've got 2 parts to this. The first is the policy, and the second part is whether we should look at HVO further. And they are fairly distinct. So looking first at the policy, there are 4 points that were made there. Now, I would say at the beginning, probably in answer to Councillor James, that they are not written out in priority order. It's a balancing act. There's 4 different directions that we've got to look in. Carbon is one, money is another, how to operate the things. And I think we can write them in a different order if you like, but officers have assured me that the order is not important. You've got to take them all into account. So that's the first point. So at scrutiny, it was widely agreed that we've got to deliver the service. So yes, that might as well stay there. And we also have to agree the finances. That's not currently under consideration. That will come as a budgeting matter later in the year, because we don't actually pay for any of these new vehicles until they're delivered. So we would need to budget later this year for something we're going to pay for the following year. So those are the first 2. Now, operational efficiency was one of those, and I agreed very much with the scrutiny committee that we ought to do a lot more work on routing, and so saying minimise the number of vehicles is not appropriate at this stage. I mean, it might be that we do need to take that into consideration at some stage, but not at the moment. And the other point was obviously the carbon output from all of our activity. And that again is where I've asked that we insert that extra wording to say, and I will read you what this says now, is to purchase and operate vehicles with the lowest overall carbon footprint that meets the operational needs and are affordable, prioritising electric vehicles over their internal combustion engine equivalents. And I suggest that's kept under review because we've only got the two on the table at the moment. It's possible that in the future hydrogen will come. But bearing in mind that this policy is only for this council or these councils at the moment, and we're not even going to exist in more than 2 years' time. So there's no point in looking too far ahead, but we do need to keep these things under review. Anyway, that's what I'm hoping on those. I've mentioned one or two other points. I would say that even if we do buy internal combustion engine vehicles, there's nothing to stop us selling them at some stage when it's found that, you know, we can cope much better with EVs. So that's, you know, it's not a be all and end all having an ICE at this stage. The other slightly complicating factor in our case is the fact we've got a contract with Biffa, and we pay for the vehicles initially, but we're not in total control of them because Biffa are responsible for the running costs, as to say, the fuel, and our leader's already mentioned that you know, charging EVs ought to be a lot cheaper than whatever sort of fuel we decide to put in the ICEs. And the other point is maintenance. And actually, people say I haven't got all this data, but actually all the vehicles are listed in Appendix 2 with rough estimates of how much the maintenance is going to cost over the coming year and how long they're likely to last. There's a coloured chart there, which unfortunately don't come out very well on my black and white printer, but there we are. That data is there. But the other big complicating factor is basically I was quite happy with the policy we had, whereby each year we looked at all the vehicles we've got, we see which ones were most in need of replacement, and we undertook to decide what would best to replace them with. As part of the contract, we undertook to replace all of the outstanding vehicles. That's to say, not the ones that are on order and not the new ones that we've already bought. So it's, I think, 55 out of 90, whatever it is we've got at the moment, have got to be replaced by December 2027, which doesn't give us very long, bearing in mind there's a lead time of about a year for these new vehicles, probably even more if you go for EVs. So we are up against the wire as to what we do at the moment. So the whole thrust of what I want to say is that we should keep flexibility in there. And I think our officers, I'll ask them to comment in a minute because they are online, keep flexibility in there, and they will have heard all the comments that have been made here and in scrutiny. And they know what the councillors in general would like us to be a lot more carbon reducing than we appear to be from this. And I'll say appear because I don't think that was the intention. I think maybe when this paper came out, we should have made it more obvious that we weren't close to the idea of EVs. It's just that we were a bit reticent on saying you must have them at this stage when they may not cope with our routes. So I think I've gone on for long enough, and at this stage I would like to ask our officers if there's anything else we should join in at this stage. I haven't mentioned HVO at the moment, but I suggest we come back to that when we've dealt with the policy.
Sounds good. Would any of the officers like to come in? Don't feel obligated to if there's nothing to add. Oh, hang on a second. Oh yes, Paul's on here.
Yeah, just to say there was nothing to add at this stage.
Thank you, Paul. But do stay because I can see some questions coming on and they may be for you or for others. Councillor Rawlins?
I think perhaps my question is more to Simon than to Paul, but I'll take it from wherever it comes. From what I understand, we're going to purchase the vehicles. So we'll do the CapEx, and then we will lease those vehicles to Biffa. So I assume that if we buy a vehicle for 250 grand as a bin truck, which is ICE, that will be one cost of leasing. But if we buy another vehicle that may be 450 grand, the going rate for leasing and the cost of that leasing to Biffa will be greater. So that when we're looking at it in terms of the cost effectiveness and the operating costs, I assume that this is of significant relevance to how we look at it.
But what's up? Sorry, Paul,
if you want to come in, go on that. Yeah, obviously the running costs that Biffa incur on the contract are passed back through to the council. So there's no advantage for us in charging more for a vehicle. So we buy the vehicles as you've outlined, and then we pass them over to Biffa for operation. Yes, we are leasing them to them, but there isn't a difference. There isn't a proposed difference in the amount that we lease to them, because those costs would just be coming back to us.
Okay.
So if Biffa have a lower operating cost for an EV vehicle, which they probably will, there's no compensation, you're saying, for the fact that we incur 450 grand rather than 250 or 500 grand instead of 250 grand for buying the vehicle.
Yeah, I'm mindful that we could be getting into talking about potential contract negotiations in a public meeting. I'm happy to talk about the details of the financial arrangement with Biffa in a confidential session, but the arrangement I think has been set out by Councillor Cooper is that the costs for operating the vehicle, and that includes repairs and maintenance and fueling, are with the contractor within a fixed contract cost. We've moved away from an open book type of contract into a fixed contract cost. So it is almost so that risk is with the contractor, and different types of vehicles, as it stands under the contract, wouldn't have that have an impact.
Thank you. I think we kind of sense what you're saying, which is what I was saying about the incentive, that actually, there is an incentive there if they could make EVs work, to actually make them work, because they're an advantage. Our MO is going to come and give us a little slap on the wrist.
No, Chair, I was simply being here because it did feel like you were right on the edge of going into contract negotiation elements. And I think Mr. Fielding stayed just the right side of the line on that. But I was just being the grumpy Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder about the fact that we were going in that direction. But if the conversation or the debate is now moving away from those contract specific issues, I'll just step back into the background, leader.
Thank you. I think so. But for any of you, if you ever wanted to have a confidential discussion, I'm very happy to go into one.
You may have to do that, I believe, because it's such a fundamental issue.
Okay, well, let's just take a few more questions, and then we can take a view on that. We will be here until midnight. I'm sorry to say. I will try and do better. Who's next? Councillor Heritage.
Thank you. It's just a point of clarification, really, because quite a lot was said by both the councillors who spoke before, Councillor Whiteman and Councillor Norman, about the life cost of vehicles and the data gathering, that that we should be making decisions based on that it should be data driven, and I was just a little bit confused about this, and it might be my understanding. Councillor Norman said there's lots of data out there. Councillor Whiteman said herself that there isn't always a lot of data available. And I'm just a little bit confused about that, and I don't know if an officer might be able to help me. I'm just, what data sources and platforms are being referred to here, and what are we aware of, and what we could have some clarification about the type of data that is available, perhaps.
Councillor Cooper?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention on live. which was mentioned by, whole life costs, which was mentioned by,
Sure, thank you.
the two speakers today, and indeed in the scrutiny meeting as well. With internal combustion engines, yes, they've been around for a while. The new ones are supposedly much more efficient than the ones they're replacing. But I think somebody could well make good guesses for lifetime costs for those. EVs have not been around that long, and the ones that are in use successfully are those being used in much more densely populated areas than ours. And it's generally recognised that for EVs, they're very good and efficient at picking the bins up, tipping them in. And in fact, many of our ICEs have electric operating things on the back. Whereas they're not very good at trundling for miles and miles in between stops, or indeed to get to where they start doing their stops. I am not aware of EVs having been in much use more than about 5 years. Now, other vehicles will, last quite a lot longer than that. You can see how old some of the vehicles are on here. So it requires somebody's inspired guesswork to come up with lifetime costs, shall we say.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. I'm going to do something a little bit radical and ask each and every one of you to ask the question in your minds before discussing things is, does the policy as it stands prevent you from actually getting the information that you need at the point of actually making the decision? Because I think it is important. It will be in a few months' time, not too long, but it gives us an opportunity now to set. And as Sue said, officers are listening. I'm pretty sure they've got the message that we will want some information in order to make that very big and important decision. So my question is, please, can we keep it to the policy? Is there anything in it that makes it inflexible enough for us not to be able to get that information later on? I have no idea who's first, but I'll go with mine.
Yeah, thank you. Just in terms of the policy and whether it is flexible enough, that is simply what I'm interested in. When I look at it, I feel that HVO is being projected often throughout there as the only alternative, and I feel like that is actually limiting our options. And I query whether that was the correct decision, and also whether or not enough due diligence was taken on HVO given the upstream emissions that don't appear to be included in the policy. So what I'm saying is I think that is actually limiting our flexibility, not actually enhancing it.
Just hold that thought. You are opening a can of worms because Councillor Cooper loves to talk about HVOs. But not Councillor, Mr. Bennett, I hear that you want to come in. Nick?
I think he's just frozen.
Oh, he has
It's a bit frozen. Very much in the
Concisely, please, Sue. HVOs.
Well, we haven't started on the HVOs yet. I mean, I've got lots of concerns about that. And all that the recommendation, the policy doesn't say much about HVOs at all. Because it's the vehicle purchase, it's not fuel purchase that the policy covers. That's why I wanted to leave HVOs until later, which is an alternative fuel for an ICE vehicle. I've got lots of concerns about that. Not least by saying my favourite thing to come up with, if you really want to save carbon, you don't travel as many miles, therefore you don't go round as often collecting the bins. And so I very much look forward to us having 3 weekly collections of some of our waste rather than 2. But that is another method, another discussion for another day. It's not part of what sort of vehicles we're having.
Thank you, and I should know that there's no agreement on that at the moment, and no such plans. It will be something that quite likely the successor authority would have to look at. Mr. Bennett, you ready to come in now? You froze on us for a minute.
I am. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's laptop issues. I think ironically my machine's overheating. The only thing I was going to do has actually been touched on by another member is that the role, I'm just asking members to remember that the role of officers is to present information and to provide an evidence base, and for members is to interpret that evidence base. There did feel like there was a little bit of blurring with one of the members from the other council presenting information. They are effectively a member of the public in this environment. So the question before you now really is this policy one that you think has had sufficient evidence put before you that you can interpret it properly, have officers apply it properly, and the point on flexibility is already made. So it's actually narrower than some of the debate seems to be taking you. So I just suggest, Chair, you need to be very cautious to keep it on that focus, please.
Yes, I have said that. I don't know whether you were with us, but I do want to give out the policy. Councillor Rowland's final question, and we can.
There's a few things to say, but first of all, there seems to be some confusion between whether this is a procurement decision or a policy decision. And the fact of the matter is it's a policy decision. That's what we're setting out, the high level policy. We are not here deciding to buy vehicles or exactly which types of vehicles. We're here setting the policy for how we would go about doing that. So to me, I think we've got the right kind of aims and objectives in there, and we can argue about the order and all that stuff and whether it's semantics. It so happens that we put statutory obligations out there as being quite important because it's law. But we've stated very clearly and strongly, I think, in here.
Is there a question?
There is a question, yes. I'm trying to get to so to me the aims and the data that we'll bring into the actual procurement down the line, I think we're okay with that. I have a problem with this as a policy because I don't think that the financial evaluation is fully laid out in here, and I think it should be done more fully than that. And I have a suggestion to make to change section 7 to add something in on that, because all it says at the moment, it mentions the word affordability, which is doing some very heavy lifting in that way to be a net present value evaluation. And then the only other things it says is it has to be within the capital and revenue budget, which is a fairly wooden and limited way of looking at the options.
Still no question.
But the question is, I'm saying the policy as it stands has got a limitation in this area, and that's the point I'm suggesting, and I'm suggesting that it needs a bit more on that to be complete. But otherwise, I would be happy with it as a policy. I mean, we talked about lots of things tonight, and lead times over a year. The way you get vehicles, one company makes the chassis cab, another company does all the bodybuilding on top. It takes a long time to procure that stuff, and there's a lot of forecasting and prediction involved.
Okay, I am really going to start being really strict, Councillor Morgan.
So this is drifting, but you actually asked a question, which was, and the question you asked was, does the policy actually prevent us making a decision?
Certainly.
Now, of course, I think the policy doesn't, because there are two stages to this. There's the policy which is in place, which says we should take the best possible decision at each time. And then from that policy, a whole series of each individual decisions follow every time we make a decision to buy a new vehicle. And at each point that we did make that decision, it may be appropriate to buy a combustion engine, it may be appropriate to buy an EV. But each of those are different. And I think, as Councillor Whiteman said and others have said, this is still a new and emerging technology for which we have some information now. And probably in 6 months' time, we'll have more information. So what might be the correct decision now with the information we have may be a slightly different decision when the officer and the cabinet member is taking that decision in 6 months or a year's time. But I am confident that the policy itself gives the officer and the cabinet member enough leeway to make the right decision based on the information they have, and where clearly there is new information that enables a different decision to be taken in terms of route or in terms of what the actual traction power is coming from, that can be done. So I'm happy that the policy does allow us to do that. So I'm happy with that. I think it does do what most of the scrutiny members here that have come on and asked for. It does allow that decision to be taken.
Okay, so I'm going to stop with questions. But what I'll do is, Councillor Cooper, are you? I can see there that we can ask as recommendation for some minor tweaks. So on the semantics, I think we probably can kind of, if affordability is the right word, it means a different thing to some people. So I'm going to try and draw a line. I think it's flexible enough. Councillor Cooper, if you're still happy to propose it, and I'm seconding.
Well, can I put forward a very bearing in mind what people have said about whole life costs? And I think it needs to come under finance, because the carbon position will already take that, the whole carbon generation into point. What we could say is make the capital and revenue budgets agreed by full council, giving due consideration to whole life vehicle costs.
Fine.
Yeah,
So
that would
it's
fit my
basically
MPV point.
fine.
Sufficiently vague that we're not prescribing what we do, but means we've got to think about it.
Sorry, leader. The finance section is completed by finance officers with their advice and recommendations in the finance area. It's not open to officers to change that. You can reflect things in decisions, but you can't amend the report and the submissions from finance officers.
But Becky was just saying the same thing. So what Becky is.
Adriana came up with this lovely.
Oh, sorry, was it you? Do you want to come in then?
Yes, so sorry, Chair, that the recommendations as they currently stand, they don't actually delegate authority to that recommendation C is not actually delegating authority to the director to make known changes. So I think what you want to do is to propose an amendment to recommendation A, which is to approve the updated waste and street cleansing vehicle selection and procurement policy, which includes the outlined procurement approach. And then the additional word and authorise the director in consultation with the relevant council member to make minor amendments.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Proposed amendment.
I can see it. Are we happy with that?
So are we saying it within that to say whole life vehicle cost rules will be taken into account? Okay, fine.
And Becky will note that they will make that minor inclusion where it is appropriate to do that, to give everybody a little bit of comfort about that. So in that case, we're not going into confidential session, I hope. So Councillor Cooper is going to propose this. I'm going to second. So hopefully, because a lot of the comments have already been made, we are in deliberations, and I do welcome additions that have not been mentioned, haven't been mentioned as part of our question section. If I could use my chair's privileges again, just to mention a couple of things. So for me, one of the important amendments, and I think Councillor Barlow did mention that, was that the decision about the next tranche of vehicles has to be, the default has to be that it's made by Cabinet. This is clearly of importance, not just to other councillors in both councils, but also the public as well. So we have allowed there to be the possibility of an individual cabinet member decision, but really that is if we're really struggling with the time frame or for whatever reason. But generally, the default for me has to be that this is made in public with maximum transparency. And I think the point about separating the policy, really what we have looked here is not to tie our hands unduly. As Cabinet, I want to consider all of these options. I want people to tell me about routing and what's feasible for them. Remember, they operate these in other areas. They're experts in their own right that we have yet to hear from. Financial calculations, etc. Although for me that case is sort of made anyway. But these will come at the point at which we're making a decision, given that this is moving quite fast and even a few months can make a difference. One thing as well is that us and the Vale face different financial constraints. The last time I checked, these obviously may have changed again, and I just wanted to make sure that in some of our tweaking, we reflected the fact that the affordability may differ for each council. And so the way that it is tweaked now, it allows for us to make a slightly different decision to the Vale for some of our own routes, and if those if alternative technology is viable on any of them. So that's another tweak that we have made. So yeah, I will leave it there. So with this adaptation to the first recommendation, I hope that we are all very happy, and I'll let Sue just sum up briefly, and hopefully we can just spoken.
I think we've said enough on it. Yes, I'm very happy with the policy.
Are we all? Do we have any more? Are we all happy to approve it? Content.
Yeah.
Let's go with content.
Thank you. Want me to go on to the now recommendations 2 and 3? I mean B and C.
B and C, yeah.
I thought we were doing the whole.
No,
we haven't done the HVO yet.
Go on then.
Right. Yes, I think I'm going to read to you so you know we have been doing our research on this. We're talking about the possibility of using hydro-treated vegetable oil, otherwise known as HVO. And I'd like to read a couple of paragraphs out of this very good APSI Energy briefing that I forwarded to people. It's just came out in June, if you read it. Anyway, it says what it's made from. HVO can be produced from a surprisingly wide range of raw materials, most commonly feedstocks of vegetable oils, rapeseed, soybean, palm oil, beef tallow, and used cooking oil. Producers are increasingly turning to lower grade waste streams because there's quite a large demand for this HVO. It's seemed to be, a step along the way as regards carbon. So they're increasingly turning to lower grade waste streams, non-food grade vegetable oils, low quality animal fats, sludge from palm oil mills, distillers' corn oil, and refining byproducts like acid oils and fatty acid distillates. High-quality feedstocks like fresh vegetable oil and used cooking oil require relatively little straightforward pre-treatment, similar to what's already done in edible oil refining. Low-quality materials need extra steps, pre-filtration to remove solid impurities and plastics, heat treatment to strip out phosphorus and metals from animal byproducts, or specialised processes for the worst quality inputs like trap grease and distillation pitches. The ability to use waste fats would otherwise be discarded is a significant part of HVO's environmental appeal. So, to me, a lot of my reservations are multiple on HVO, but it is another possibility for us to look to reducing our carbon footprint. It does, I think, smack to some people as greenwashing, but so be it. But what I would say is if we go down the route of having this, somebody watching our vehicles in the street, it will look just like any other ICE vehicle because indeed they use the same vehicles. That's one of the benefits of HVO is that you can use exactly the same vehicles as you put diesel into. So nobody's going to know unless we put stickers on the back saying this vehicle is using HVO in an attempt to decrease our carbon footprint, because otherwise it's a bit of a waste of time if nobody knows. So public perception is probably quite important here, as well as all the other things it takes in. But from what I've just read to you, how much carbon we're saving will depend a lot on where the HVO comes from. Now, there are various schemes to sort of qualify where things have come from and make sure it's all good. As demand goes up, you can see they have to straighten the barrel a bit more to get enough. And indeed, the cost of HVO, it is more than diesel. And what's involved, because it's a market product, when the price of diesel goes up, would you believe it? The price of HVO goes up as well. And the gap between the two is fairly consistent, I've been told. I mean, I don't know, I haven't studied it in any great detail, and that doesn't mean to say it will stay the same for all time anyway. When you actually get round to burning the vehicle, the fuel in a vehicle, the chemical makeup is not hugely different for the two different fuels, the diesel and the HVO. I mean, the saving on carbon is how the HVO got there in the first place. Any passing vehicle will still have air quality problems, and public perception might not like seeing these things. So I think they're all issues that we're going to have to do an awful lot of good comms on to say, you know, we're just doing our best if we do go down that route. However, the actual recommendation doesn't commit us to doing this. It says approves considering using HVO instead of mineral diesel. So to that extent, I'm happy that we do further research on it, even though I'm personally not that keen on it at the moment, but I can be persuaded on one or the other.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for this. And again, it's just keeping that kind of toolbox of potential solutions. Joint scrutiny was really clear that they saw this absolutely as a second best. Some thought that it should be in the mix, some thought, what's the point? I have a lot of sympathy with both of those views. I think, again, for the purposes of the policy to allow us maximum flexibility, I think this is the right approach. And of course, yeah, it does need to be looked into. Councillor Walken.
Yeah, I'm not convinced about HVO at the moment myself. I think one of the key factors is we need to look at the whole carbon life cycle in this, because if it is tipping out your local chip shop fat, well, that's great. But in actual fact, that kind of HVO has already been used where possible. And now we're looking at stripping fields and undertaking some intensive farming techniques to provide that oil, and therefore, which is absolutely not the right thing to do. So I think if there is a way of doing it amongst where the carbon cycle for what's used is better than anything else, that's great. I remain incredibly suspicious that in actual fact, because a number of people ask this, that the chip shop oil is all gone, and we're actually generating probably not very nice farming practices in order to provide the right level of oil to suit the need. And that's fact, in this case, mostly we ought to be looking at batteries rather than oil, mostly. But again, coming back to the theme of the first motion, it's about taking the right decision, but the whole carbon cycle and the whole carbon input throughout the whole cycle needs to be a factor in this.
Yeah, and we have made a change, haven't we, Sue, to include kind of from ethical sources somewhere in the report, just to be absolutely clear that that is the only way in which it will be considered. Even that is, I think, difficult to gauge sometimes.
It's not only ethical; it's where it's come from and the transport involved in that.
That was the point. It's about the whole carbon cost of doing HVO, not just the delivery.
What we're asked to agree here is simply to consider. That seems to me to be a no-brainer. It seems to me that if we can get HVO that does cut our emissions by 90% in terms of carbon, if we can get stuff, as is generally believed to be the case, that issues less particulates and less NOx, that too is a potential win, depending on the source. And what's been said is absolutely right. We have to look at the whole cycle, everything that's involved. If it's sustainable, if it's from crops, which is renewed, that isn't the end of the world, to my mind. But we do need to know that it's ethically sourced, and it's not going to be palm oil, and it's not going to be other bad sources that we wouldn't be wanting to use. But all this says is to consider.
Yeah, and I think scrutiny were just a bit anxious that we would be using it as an excuse not to go for a whack to EVs. And I just want to make very clear that that has never been how we would interpret this policy. Are we happy to then now go and approve B and C so we can put this one and start going through the other very interesting items? Are we all happy with that? Me and Sue will propose in second. All right. Now, I did have some notes on agenda item 9, which I will be introducing in the absence of Councillor Barker. And this is the so-called business rates local discretionary top-up relief scheme for 26-27. I cannot locate my notes, so I am just going to wing it. Oh, okay. Yeah. but to be fair, this has been kind of a really important, kind of, I would say, fairly innovative scheme for us. Over the years, we had a motion from Councillor Dragonetti, Councillor Giles, and Councillor Snowden, all urging both us as a council, but also government to do more to support our pubs. It is fair to say that for us, pubs are not just another hospitality venue. They are, in many of our smaller villages, they're the only community space left. We also know that they have been struggling for a long time. And so certainly from COVID and actually that has increased over time. The other thing that we know about pubs is that as a result of these financial challenges, they have been closing. I exchanged some emails with Camera, and I was told that about 18 have closed in the last 5 years. I think of about 140 or whatever that would have been. I think that is quite a high percentage actually of loss, although a couple I'm told may reopen. So with that in mind, and again, really grateful for all the ideas that our full council meetings and the vote motions that we've proposed have generated, which have culminated in us putting our best foot forward and proposing a discretionary local scheme. The latest motion, the one that was proposed by Councillor Snowden, did suggest a much broader scheme, which wouldn't be just for pubs, but cafes, hospitality, etc. And I would say that there are two reasons to my mind, and by the way, the case for targeting is very clearly made in your reports. I'm just trying to see what paragraphs, but I think it's 7 onwards, 8, paragraph 8 onwards. But the two main reasons for me, one of them is that actually pubs have suffered disproportionately because of the recent revaluation, and their rateable value has gone up by 40%, which of course is a lot more than the 6-7% for other kind of cafes, and so there is a really good kind of financial case to be made for targeting. The other is that a much more practical one, or two practical reasons. One of them is that the reality is that if we were to work out a scheme and all of its eligibility and definitions that are legally sound and robust to withstand potential challenges, that would take a long time because of some of what was proposed in the motion would have been really quite tricky to unpick. So what we are proposing here is a top-up scheme to do the scheme that government are currently running, which kind of all of these practical logistical challenges go away because it's already there. And the other one is purely financial. If we were to include hospitality, and hospitality is really broad. It's hotels, it's chains, cafes, international. Effectively, that cost would just not be something that we could afford. So we do have to target, and we do have to target where it most hurts. The report is excellent. I want to thank officers. I think if you haven't had a chance to read it, if we've got anybody who is joining us, other councillors or the public, please do have a read. The case for targeting is well made, and we are doing the best that we can with the resources that we have. And when I say we, it very much is the royal we, because we're pinching a little bit from county council and a little bit from government. So the actual cost to us as a council is around £72,000. We believe. We shall see. And the average benefit is to each pub, eligible pub, I should say, is of around 1,500, and that of course would be in addition to the aspect of 1,100 that government-ish is already supporting pubs with. So it's starting to make a little bit of a difference to the margins. Is it enough? absolutely not. We have quite obviously the challenges around electricity costs, energy costs. There are just so many in terms of paths. But I hope that this will kind of put us in the right direction. I must make very clear that for the moment, this is a one-off scheme. We, of course, any decisions would be part of budget setting, but it's important to note that the member from Bakerfield has made some positive statements around reviewing, reflecting on rates, the rates regime, and whether that is supportive to small business, recognising that perhaps the government have got it wrong on small business. So I think it's great to have it in place to get it out as quickly as possible and to see what else may come from government before we make any decisions on the future. So it is very much a one-off as we stand. So I will stop there. Questions? Yes.
More observation, if I may. We've had a long background to this. Councillor Dragonetti's motion, Councillor Giles' motion, and then more recently, Councillor Snowden's one. So we've had a long history of looking at this and being concerned. I think paragraph 9 makes the point that you made, Maggie, about the extra impact that the rates revaluation has had on the pubs. And yes, the whole of hospitality is having a hard time, but whether we look at that information right there or whether we look at the attrition rate, the number of closures of pubs, there clearly is evidence that this is the particular point of the market that's suffering most dramatically now. In many ways, our rate system is quite unfair as between things like online retailing and bricks and mortar retailing. It's not a balanced and fair system. But all we can do here is look at all the many taxes that are hitting pubs and try and do this modest amount of help to try and keep them going. And there are limitations to this, but it is targeted at least at the most critical point.
Thank you very much. Do we have actual questions or should we go straight to debate? What do we think?
Debate.
Okay.
There was a question about framing this debate.
So I will propose, Tony will second. There's a lot of people. That's always a good time. I will go to Georgina. She is a former publican herself, so I feel that there's a very good place to debate there for the second. Sorry, Tony. But I will go to you first as part of debate because I have taken the second thing away from you.
Yeah, it's just couple of very quick points, and some of them you've made already. But our pubs are a vital part of our communities. They're a key part of the social glue. They're not the only ones, and not everybody. Pub isn't somewhere where everyone goes, but a hell of a lot of our people in our communities do want them. Fuel costs, national insurance costs. Business rates are adding to the pressures on all this on what is an absolutely it's not a 9 to 5 job, it's a 5 to 9 job or a 5 to 1 job. But most people working in pubs, they work incredibly long hours to keep their businesses going. It's easy enough to shout about this on social media, but we're the actual ones in the room doing this. We're actually delivering it. We're not shouting about it on social media. We've actually got a policy that we can deliver this. And I very, very much hope that we'll be in a position to repeat it for next year. I realise that's a decision for a later date, but this is a great first step. I really, really hope that we as a council are in a position to do something about that next year, although obviously that will be a decision for a later time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morgan. Some of us are shouting on social media about it, I have to admit. Unashamedly. Councillor Jones, I think, was it?
Okay, yeah, thanks. I mean, I think this is a culmination in a lot of hard work by officers and everybody else involved. I believe we're the first council to actually have a scheme such as this. You're the first leader, Maggie, to announce such a scheme as this. And
Queen of Pubs.
Yeah, and the support on social media would indicate that it's popular policy, I think. But more seriously, though, I mean, the pubs have been greatly affected by the ineptitude of this government, particularly Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, hiking business rates out of control. All we are actually doing is really trying to give them a bit back, but the government's already stolen from them. Even the 15% the government's giving them back is just reduce the amount of stealing from them. So I mean, the reality is, all we're trying to do is to fix the mess Labour's left, and hopefully, as you said, the member for Macclesfield can actually do a better job than the last 10 years' work of pretty hopeless Prime Ministers.
Thank you. Councillor Giles always reminds us of the politics of this hall. Do we have anybody on this one? Councillor Cooper.
Yes, I'm very happy to see this coming forward. My husband's very tied up in producing Socks and Ale magazine for the camera branch in the area, and he did last time do a very good detailed account of all the costs that pubs have, and it makes you realise quite how many overheads they've got. And perhaps I could take this opportunity to draw to the attention. There's a
Councillor Cooper, I'm just paused there. I think Emma wants to come in.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, it's sounding like we're drifting into Councillor Cooper needing to make a declaration if she's involved in a position of authority or management in CAMRA as an influencing body. So I think
no, she's not.
I'm not.
Your husband is okay. All right. Well, right.
Okay, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, I'll leave it out. But I would just say pubs have a lot of costs, whoever puts them in place. And I would draw people's attention to a current lobbying scheme, which is called That's the Problem, because VAT actually is a much bigger drain on pubs. And there's a petition that people can sign saying, look, reduce pubs VAT from 20% down to 10%, which would make a really big difference. This is a very good paper for what we can do on our scale, and so full support for it.
Thank you very much. And before I go for seconding to Councillor Heritage, just briefly to say that we did, as part of the motion, promise to write to government. That letter is ready. We were just waiting to add the bit that we are actually doing something about it. Some of you will have seen it. So if this is approved, then I would be very happy to press send, because yeah, it is not all with us, as Councillor Cooper said. VAT is an issue, and it's one that has been raised by pubs that I have engaged with as part of this. Councillor Heritage.
I'm going to keep this really brief because I think that most of it's been said. We're very supportive. I particularly wanted to support and second this motion because of my own experience as a publican, and all I can say, it was probably one of the greatest privileges of my life in terms of experience, but financially it was probably the worst decision I ever made. It was probably the hardest business I've ever been involved in. It is an 18-hour day. It doesn't matter how hard you try, it doesn't matter how good you are always up against it when you're running a pub. And it's extremely hard work. I came out with less than I went in, and I think I ran a very good pub. So all I will say is that I would have been very grateful for this type of support. It was business rates, it was rent, and then perhaps areas we won't go into today in terms of the ties with breweries, but the business rates were a huge part of it. And you can you can have a large pub, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily full every day, and it doesn't necessarily mean you can afford those business rates. And I would have been very grateful for this in my time, and I'm very, very happy to support it now, and that's all I'll say.
Thank you so much for bringing that lived experience in. Right, are we all happy to support this? Yes, unanimous. What I will ask is for Councillor Morgan to step in the chair for just a few minutes. I need to take a little break, Councillor Morgan, if that's okay with you. You are the next one introducing the paper anyway.
Yes. So, apologies, I made some notes on my book. Yes, thank you. So, item 10 on the agenda is about the community-led housing seed fund policy and application process. This was an item we undertook to bring back following the proposal in the budget from the Green Group. It was a request to put some money aside and put a policy aside. Councillor Bennett in the public speaking raised a comment about the form not quite matching the policy, and we'll ensure that's corrected. So yeah, this is about providing the opportunity for community organisations to start off 60k in the current year. Is Paul on? Paul, do you want to add anything at this point?
No, nothing to add from me at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. I'm proposing this. We'll go through questions in due course. I think there was a question from, was it Councillor Bennett, around how we defined a community housing association. I think yes, we would not really expect so hard to qualify in this, and we'll undertake to make certain that's a bit more clearly defined. But yes, this is for smaller organisations in our community to give them some seed cord money to get started. So are there any questions at the start before we go on to debate? Could I see somebody who's willing to second, please? Councillor Rawlings, thank you. So we'll move into debate. Comments, please. I mean, this has been fairly well trailed. Councillor Cooper.
It's a question, really. Should we make it clearer that these bodies must be based in South Oxfordshire rather than anywhere else, to make them more localised, so that you don't get things from people like Sobar, which is obviously cover a much wider area?
Yes.
But, I mean, I think we were looking at some individual towns, villages that might want to start these things, or is it unduly restricted? I don't know.
Paul, could you just confirm?
Yeah, I'll bring in Lorinda or Jamie on this because they'll be able to answer on that.
I can't read the question at this distance, so apologies.
It's okay. I'll answer that one. So in the policy, we've tried to make it as clear as we can that the project must be delivered within our administrative area, and it must be delivered by a community-led organisation. So, for instance, if a small village was to bring it forward, the expectation would be that that project was delivered in that village and not elsewhere in the district.
That wouldn't include Sobar or something.
Yeah. So these are small community organisations. I think that there's a limit of 10k per application and 60k overall, which I mean, the sort of organisations that will apply to that wouldn't be the bigger organisations anyway. The one thing, maybe just to add to that, is I've asked officers that if we are oversubscribed, then we'll keep a record of how oversubscribed we are, and then when considering the budget for next year, we can at least have a view as to what that level of oversubscription was. It doesn't mean that there would be money available, but at least we have a clear idea of what the need might be in the community. Any further questions or debate? Right, if we can move to a vote on this. So I propose that all in favour? That is unanimous, thank you. We now move on to item 11, which is the development of a joint community cohesion strategy. It's going to be proposed by Councillor Heritage, who is seconding, please.
I thought Maggie was quite keen to, but I don't mind.
Yes, but yeah.
All right, Councillor Cooper will second, and if Councillor Philippa Rivers returns during the debate, she can have a comment. Over to Councillor Heritage.
Thank you. Well, it would be easy for me to talk about how excited I am about this very important strategy and the plans within it that I find exciting, but I have to remind myself that on this particular occasion, the goal is to have the strategy approved so that we can, I hope, get on with engaging with our communities and implementing new and existing inclusive projects and bringing the whole strategy to life for the benefit of South Oxfordshire residents, and also create a strategy that will be fit for the future authority, effectively creating a positive legacy of community cohesion. So with thanks to our excellent officers, Phil Barker and Jaffa Holland, I will just outline this report. The purpose of the report is to update Cabinet on the wider community cohesion activity ongoing across the district, and also to recommend to Cabinet to approve the creation of our 5-year joint community cohesion strategy with, this is across Southern Vale, which will include an action plan for 2027 and 28. So the background, in recent years, both Southern Vale have experienced significant growth in migrant populations, supported by multiple schemes and partnership working. And alongside this, we've had the rising cost of living, which has increased hardship, inequality and demand on services, whilst putting pressure on housing, health and community relations. Our council has existing schemes to promote health and wellbeing, and this includes the new Be Together programme, supporting integration and independence through activities focused on activity, connection, mobility and skills. National reviews highlight that integration should support new migrants, while long-term community cohesion strategies help all communities live well together and manage social tensions. Southern Vale both approved motions and have committed to developing a community cohesion action plan backed by funding, in addition to adopting a socio-economic duty to address disadvantage. So officers propose a joint 5-year community cohesion strategy and a 2-year action plan addressing migration, inequality and wider community pressures. The proposal is to work with Belong, who are an expert partner to lead engagement, bring stakeholders together and co-design our strategy, which is informed by national best practice. Councils would require £125,000 to partner with Belong, and that represents £62,500 from each council, Southern Vale, and £100,000 of funding will be put towards community projects in the action plan. So the recommendations are, as written in the report, that Cabinet note the existing community cohesion activity already being delivered across both councils through the Community Hub and Be Together programme. That Cabinet approve the development of a 5-year community cohesion strategy that supports the council's motions for fair treatment for all residents. And subject to the strategy being approved, we're asked that Cabinet notes that the strategy will finalise a fully loaded action plan for the year 27-28, linking all existing grant funding and national lottery funding into an homogenous action plan. The strategy action plan will outline in principle further actions that any future authority can consider to support community cohesion. And I've just read that out because I'm aware that there was a slight change in wording. Also, subject to the strategy above being approved, we're asked that Cabinet approves the commissioning of Belong, a specialist third sector organisation with recognised expertise in developing cohesion strategies that link cultural, social and economic factors to deliver best practice to develop a community cohesion strategy and action for the year 2027-28. Cabinet approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heritage. We'll now move on to, I think, questions and debate together, because at least one of our council can't do.
And we do have support from our officers on this as well.
So
we need it.
So before we go on to questions and debate, is there anything further that officers want to add? No, thanks. Thanks, Chair. Thank you. So questions and debates, and then Councillor Heritage can sum up, can answer the queries in a summary. So, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. At the council briefing, there were questions asked about the organisation Belong. I personally had never heard of it before it was put forward here, but that's not really surprising. I just wondered whether either of the officers or indeed members have had interaction with. Maggie said she came across them in her day job, just to get some sort of reassurance that they are a bona fide organisation and they're likely to do what they say they can do.
I can answer that if you're happy.
Yeah,
Please do. Yeah.
So they are a think tank as well. So they work with and have been recommended by the LGA. They recently published a paper. They also have worked with a Labour think tank, which was created around looking at the differences around cohesion. And cohesion is not just integration by any stretch of the imagination. It's about poverty, it's about equality. And they have, there was a riot unfortunately in Tamworth. And within Tamworth Council, they were commissioned and provided significant support around the creation of their community cohesion strategy. We have spoken to Tamworth. We had the manager come and speak to us, and they could not sing their praises enough about how much they actually went out and interacted and with having those difficult conversations. So they went to all parts of the community and they brought all different views together and peoples together. And some people still have got differences of views, which is absolutely fine, but they actually managed to get an action plan that the communities within Tamworth were able to sign up to and agree to. And by doing that, they were given funding by the Ministry of Communities and Local Government as a sort of a test case, if you like, around Tamworth and what can be done. And now the National Lottery, through basically LGDs talking to them, have provided them with the funding to do 40 community cohesion strategies across the country. And that is with all councils, and that's where the extra funding comes from. And we were asked a question about their size, because they are quite small. They will expand and contract as needed, depending on the amount of local authorities that they're working with. And they're doing this in 3 tranches each year. So that they're not trying to over-deliver and under-promise. What they're doing is taking on 3 or 4 local authorities 3 times a year, and then working with them to enable them to have a strategy that is very much place-based.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yes.
Any further comments, Councillor Cook?
No, that's very reassuring. Thank you.
Really pleased to see this coming forward, joining all these strands together, and you know, the fact that it's bringing all residents within the scope of this policy is one coherent thing. I do also see possible linkages to, I think it's the government's Get Britain Working programme, but bringing people who are economically inactive for one reason or another, who may be isolated or deprived, helping those to come into the mainstream. And I think there's probably a linkage between this strategy and that, which is the county responsibility. But no, this is fantastic. Let's join rocks and strands together. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Philip Rivers wanted to make a brief comment.
Yeah, just as part of deliberations, just to say that community cohesion, I think, has very much come to light as a kind of an important area, emerging area of work for us all. This is following some of the community tensions, and I think it is the right thing that it sits alongside integration, but recognising that it is much broader, as our officers have helpfully reminded us. There are all sorts of national and local pieces of work in this space. Government have recently published their Protecting North Matters action plan, and as part of that, there are some promises around community cohesion and integration, which I think are important. But one of the things I wanted to mention is that I recently, and by the way, I won't list my credentials, so don't worry, to our monitoring officers. So just to say that there was a piece of research that was done that I came across as part of the day job, and it showed that although around integration, about 90 local authorities had integration services provided to their new communities, on cohesion, they were much further behind. And I think that probably is an oversight. They needed to have gone hand in hand all along. So I'm really proud that we are putting them alongside each other and are going to be looking for the different skills that are needed to grapple with what is an increasingly important challenge that we face. And some of it is dictated by the fact that we don't meet anymore. We are often on social media. Since COVID, we have isolated in rural settings. We are particularly isolated, and so we really need to think of ways and to actually get into communities to try and address and talk about some of these thorny issues and learn how to disagree well. People are not evil just because they have some anxiety around migration. But we also need to recognise that actually there is some work to be done to make communities resilient from some of these really toxic narratives that are only there to divide us. So I'm really happy to see it, and I'm really happy it's in the capable hands of Georgina and our officers, very, very strong officers, and I'm sure you will lead us very actively through this work.
Thank you. Thank you. Just say I'm very supportive. Thank you to Georgina and our strong officers. I look forward to each policy being implemented in the nearest future.
Before I come to Georgina to sum up, I'm just going to say, I mean, the strapline is excellent, isn't it? Be active together, be connected together, be mobile together, and be skilled together. That's a really great way of selling it. And you can all start by joining us in Didcot on Saturday week at Cornerstone all day for a community event. So I encourage as many people as possible, whether in the room or online, please come to Didcot in 9 days' time and join us. So I'll hand you over to Councillor Heritage to sum up.
Yeah, probably don't need to say very much. It has been said. It's a very timely strategy, bearing in mind recent tensions, social tensions, community tensions. I'm also really pleased that this strategy will highlight not just the integration difficulties for those new to this country, but also those who feel disenfranchised or perhaps have a perception that they're left behind, and the rural inequalities that we face. So I think this is an excellent, all-encompassing strategy, really, that can only benefit our communities. And I think we're going to have excellent partners to work with. I'm very much looking forward to working with Belong. And I'm really, as Councillor Filipova has said, this is something to be proud of. I'm really proud of this. Really proud that we're taking this taking this forward, and perhaps in the direction that we're taking. We're once again, I think we're leading the way in as we should, in the right way. And I would just like to thank our officers for their excellent work.
Thank you. So, all in favour, please.
I'm not voting on this one.
That is unanimous. Thank you. So we now move on in the agenda. I'm going to, by Chair's privilege, and move on to item 15, because we are approaching at the end of the meeting, and item 15 is something we have to discuss at the meeting, and we need to take a decision on today. Councillor Filipova Rivers, do you want me to go through the?
I'm happy to propose it, given that you're chairing, just to give you a little bit of a break. So this is the so-called Thames Valley Spatial Development Strategy, or SDS, and it is a two-note report. The same is going through all the constituent, I guess, authorities, local authorities. So the background to this is that this paper sets out the process for the pre-inception phase of a Thames Valley spatial development strategy. SDS is a new statutory requirement. This is something that we have to do. We don't have choice. It is part of government's agenda for growth, it's fair to say. Government is targeting having coverage of the whole of England to have what unexamined SDS in place by mid-2029. The purpose of it is to set a vision and provide regional spatial frameworks. So this is kind of a high-level planning-related matters, setting the scale and distribution of housing growth, investment opportunities, and cross-boundary infrastructure, etc., over a 30-year period. And I think this is important to know that horizon. So there was a consultation on the geography which was launched in February. That has now concluded, and we are expecting an outcome on that in the autumn. In the geography that government set out included Swindon, of course, and also Buckinghamshire. But so far, it is fair to say that Buckinghamshire has not been part of the kind of parallel, if you will, discussions around a Thames Valley strategic authority. These can be the same or different depending on agreements of constituent authorities, but I won't go into that. Other important things to note is that the responsible body will be Bracknell Forest. That's correct, if my memory serves me right. And so really the recommendation here is that we note the various recommendations in the report, we delegate the detailed agreements and working arrangement for the pre-inception of the SDS to the Deputy Chief Executive place. So that's Susanna Malcolm, who is on the call, and I'm sure she can come in and kind of let me know if I have missed anything. And that will be in consultation with legal and democratic. I think just to say that voting arrangement is going to be something that is going to be quite important, but that is for a later date. Certainly myself as leader will be taking a very keen interest in it. Unfortunately, believe it or not, although this is a kind of a strategic planning matter, districts themselves are not automatic members of the setup of so-called strategic development board. Is that the right strategic development board? Spatial development board? Which one is it? John, correct me.
Strategic planning board.
Strategic planning board. Close. Not quite. There you go. So we would, as districts, need to be co-opted. I think this is just really silly. As the planning authorities, we certainly have the skill, the knowledge, the experience, the engaging communities and bringing them along. I think it's really silly. But my hope is that our other upper tier authorities will co-opt us. I believe they still would not give us voting rights, but at least we would be around the proverbial table, making our voices very known as we have done in the past in other such forums. So I will leave it there. Hopefully I hadn't missed anything. Like I said, this is to note. We shall be keeping a very close eye on this and doing all that we can to shape it in the way that would suit us and our communities.
Okay, so before I come to debate, I would note we have 38 minutes left and 3 items afterwards. So if people could keep their comments as brief as they could be. Councillor Cooper?
It's a question really as much as a comment. Are we being told what issues? I mean, you read out, I think, infrastructure and housing and things like that. One point that came up from that very useful briefing we had this morning, which I mentioned, is I think that these bodies ought to also have some oversight of water supply and drainage issues, because it's something that our planning department has continual problems with, and it obviously affects it. You can't just stick development where you think might be nice if you can't get the utilities there to serve them. So I don't know whether you feed back to government saying, can we put this in as well? Or...
Yeah, infrastructure will be covered, and I suspect, and Sam can come in and tell me if I'm wrong, but infrastructure is part of it, as is nature recovery. So there's some really good things in there that probably can and should be done at that level.
Yeah.
But infrastructure is certainly on there, and given that the kind of broad areas for housing growth are part of it, of course, infrastructure that supports that development should also be a part of it. But Suzanne, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So all infrastructure will be part of it because of the wider geography. It makes sense to look at infrastructure over a wider Thames Valley geography. We're already doing local area energy planning and linking into Thames Valley around that as well. So all those kind of those issues work better at a regional level rather than at a district level.
Thank you. Councillor Giles?
Yeah, just a very quick, simple question. This is I think probably one of the first documents I've ever read where Swindon is referred to as being in the Thames Valley. Is that your understanding?
No, I was actually going to say, just to be really clear, I might refer to it as Thames Valley and Swindon.
Yes.
Just to make the point, but yes, thank you for that introduction.
Yes, the geography in this has been dictated by government.
Yeah.
It's not something that we have been involved with agreeing.
Well, we have commented on their consultation, but again, decision hasn't yet been made.
Councillor,
I very much agree with the aim behind this, which is to have an industrial strategy, to have a high-level infrastructure strategy across the UK in the way that many, for example, European countries do. That makes total sense. It may take 10 to 20 years before we see any benefit from it, and it's going to cost £4 million. But it is a sensible direction. The nonsense in it is, as has been said, trying to drag Swindon into the Thames Valley where it doesn't belong.
I just point out we're noting this rather than debating it. But any other comments? No. So the only comment I would want to make is I welcome the comments made and the letter written by the leader of OCC, who, although they are our tier 1 authority and represent us, so I certainly welcome the comments made by Councillor Beard in his role as chair leader of OCC today. Yes, so are we? If there's nothing else, we all agree to note this.
Yeah.
Agreed. Do we need a formal proposer or seconder?
Oh, you got a second. Yeah.
Brilliant. Awesome. Thank you. I'll put out to you all agree. Thank you. We now move on, and apologies for that, but I was advised we needed to get through that particular item today. We have 3 more items on the agenda. Item 12 is Councillor Giles, I believe, you're proposing. Who is seconding?
Yeah, okay.
Councillor Philip Overruled.
Second.
Thank you. Councillor Giles.
Yeah, thank you. In the interest of time, I won't give a lengthy speech. But this report that I'm proposing today covers the period 1st of July 25 to 31st of March 2026, and it's looking back at what the council's done over that period of time, and moving forward it will be done on a 12-month period. It is an adjustment as a one-off to make sure it aligns with financial reporting times. This has been extensively looked at by scrutiny and others, and the report was viewed very favourably. It covers all areas of the council's work over an extended period of time. So in a nutshell, the 5 areas are action on climate change and nature recovery, where we've managed to obviously reduce carbon emissions over a sustained period of time, financial stability and innovative transformation, where again we're running balanced budgets, having inherited a mess from the Conservatives some time ago, participation, accessibility and accountability, making sure that we're engaging the public, whether it's through visibly going out to the community and emails, etc., and making sure that we're doing more and more and listening to the feedback we get from consultation replies. Homes infrastructure to meet local needs. That means obviously including the council houses we're now buying and providing to the community, as well as making sure we're able to provide the infrastructure that everybody badly needs and wants to live a happy life. And finally, thriving, healthy and inclusive communities. And obviously we've just had a really great report from Council Heritage on that, as well as having recently introduced a new motion on the socioeconomic duty, rather, thank you, to make sure that we're supporting as many of the communities as possible with all the work we're doing. And I should say this delivery plan actually does ensure, and it does say in the report, that everybody with a protected characteristic and beyond is actually going to benefit from this report. It's been looked at, so we're very pleased about that too. So yeah, it's been extensively looked at. I've had all manner of queries from people in scrutiny, even onto the detail from some as to whether or not calls are answered by people or by answer phones. So I'm very confident in the work we've done, and I would like to propose this be approved today.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Before we move on, is there any further comments that officers wish to make? No, thank you.
No comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted.
Just one really second. I was one of the things I wanted to point out. I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff in there. Yes. This is kind of looking a little bit my mother has probably heard the news, so she's kind of, is that now 100% of our meetings are publicly streamed. This is really good for transparency. I know we've wanted to do it for quite some time, and yet again the technology was letting us down a little bit, but in any case we got there, and I thought that's really good. Now we just need to get people to both read this excellent report and also join at our meeting, but at least they're there for when people are interested.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, debate?
But the volume that's in there should be 3 hours of debate, but we don't have the time, so we just have to approve the excellent job done.
I mean, just from my own portfolio, I just wanted to pick out, 345 affordable new homes provided across the south in 25-26, and an 82% homelessness prevention rate, which is massively above the average. So I think in terms of looking at our most vulnerable people in South, I think that's fantastic. But I just, maybe that's my portfolio. So I spotted that particularly, but I did want to bring that particular bit out. So anything further to add in something up, Councillor Giles?
No, at this stage, no. I just encourage everyone to support it.
Well, thank you. All in favour?
Unanimous.
Thank you. Item 13 is the South Oxfordshire Nature and Climate Action Fund, and it's Councillor Giles proposing. Who's seconding this one? Councillor Heritage. Councillor Giles, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, or Vice Chair, rather. I'll just try and briefly address Councillor Bennett's comments earlier, which were constructive, and thank you for that. I don't know if you're still on the call or not, but I was just looking carefully at the rules of the scheme, and actually my understanding is that actually this is quite light touch, actually, and the organisations that apply do not have to provide all the information that it sort of suggests they do. I'll just read a section of that. It says, to mitigate against any misuse of a grant or the council's reputation from this relaxed criterion to apply for a grant, officers will request the governance financial documents mentioned above for every fifth application, and any organisations have not received council funding in the last 12 months. So actually, it's not making every single applicant provide every single bit of information. But I know that the query was around, should there be a difference between small and large? But I think actually officers have probably gone quite far in terms of being quite relaxed in how they actually implemented this policy. So we'll take a look, but I don't think it probably needs actioning. The feedback there. Right, so on the actual fund itself, there is a budget of 100k. This is part of a wider nature and climate action fund. The officers came about thanks to being put forward during the budget earlier this year. There are a number of projects that people can put themselves forward for. Town and parish councils can apply, not-for-profits can as well. And again, there's some limited criteria that people have to put forward to show that they're eligible. But the reality is this should be a really good scheme to help nature and climate across the community, and encourage it to be supported today.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Councillor Heritage, you said something to say?
Well, no, I'll just add that I know we have an excellent package of grants at SODC. I'm really proud to be able to add this grant to our package. It's I know we already offer grants that support perhaps climate resilience, but as we've already commented, with the weather, with the heat that we've suffered recently, this is extremely timely. This is we do need that additional support, and I'm really pleased that we're able to offer that to our communities, and I'll enjoy seeing this come into the grant scheme. So I'm very, very happy to support it. That's all I'll say.
Really briefly, so I was just looking at the project could focus on areas such as energy, waste consumption, transport and travel, adaptation, nature recovery, community access to nature. So very, very broad. And one of the things around adaptation I had actually emailed officers, but I don't know whether I have received a response yet, but it was around the need to kind of invest in pool spaces. These heat waves, I don't even know if we can call them heat waves anymore, because it just seems to be just one very hot period. But it's something that is really playing on my mind. The schools really struggled. Some of our elderly populations really struggled. Our houses are shocking when it comes to insulation. Obviously, we don't have air conditioning it's quite rare, I would say. So I just wondered whether this fund could be used to purchase air conditioning equipment. It's not for you to answer today, but I think it's just something to have a think about, to make a pick up and make it very clear if it is eligible as a cost, that perhaps we should encourage parishes and village halls to perhaps install some to create cool space.
Anybody else?
Just a comment that actually if it would tag on very well with using heat exchange. Yeah, what's the
that one?
No, the what's the new way of heating things rather than having
Heat exchange.
Yes, heat exchange. Yeah. Because they can be used in reverse, and as for heating and cooling. So if you get one of those in the first place, be a good idea.
I think that's everyone. I just had one comment to bear in mind, which is I've seen some councils have a list of cool spaces, and I wonder whether that was something that this might be used for as well, to actually provide residents with you could go to place A, B, or C if you want somewhere that's a bit cooler.
I'll tell you what, I was in the supermarket and shopping for a long time.
But yeah, so I mean, for certain residents, knowing that a particular room or there's a space that's available might be helpful. If that's, I'm not suggesting changing. I'm thinking that might be helpful.
But I think the scheme is broad enough that would be, I'm sure, considered as part of it.
Brilliant. So, Councillor Giles, is there anything you want to say something up?
Nope, it's a good scheme. I look forward to it being introduced. Thank you to again Grant's colleagues and others for making this happen.
Right, so all in favour? That's unanimous. We now move on to item 14, which I'm going to propose. This would have been Peter Paul's to propose, but he's late. So this is the revised property asset disposal policy and the community asset transfer policy. On the whole, it's a tidying up of policies we've had previously. It brings forward updated, strengthened policies to guide how the council manages, disposes and transfers land and property assets, particularly important in lieu of LGR coming down the road ahead of us. The policies form part of our key broader corporate asset management framework, ensuring we have a consistent and joined up approach across the councils. The purpose of the report is to update the existing approach and to seek approval to adopt revised policies for asset disposal and community asset transfer. Members will recall that a disposal policy was originally introduced following the strategic property review in 2021. Since then, council has received a number of inquiries, particularly for minor land disposal, and the process has proven to be resource intensive. And this reflects the reality that many sites are constrained by tide restrictions, open space protections, or historic agreements. The updated approach brings forward a revised joint property asset disposal policy, which sets out a clear, consistent, robust process for identifying and disposing of surplus or underperforming assets. It ensures transparency in how we make decisions, compliance with legal requirements, and that we attain the best terms available whenever that is appropriate. We have a standalone community asset transfer policy. Previously, this was included within the disposal policy. The community asset transfer allows land and buildings to be transferred to community organisations at less than market value where justified and agreed, and where this delivers social, economic and or environmental benefits. Transfers are not automatic. They are subject to a robust business case, and they are all assessed on a case-by-case basis. The changes in the revised policy remove the minor land disposal process, which hasn't delivered benefits. It's created inefficiencies, and it removes prescriptive elements to allow professional judgment on a case-by-case basis. The changes will provide clear, up-to-date guidance for officers and members, ensure consistency and transparency. It will enable the council to realise value from its assets where appropriate, and to support communities through asset transfers where this delivers wider benefits for the community. Members should note that the council has a legal duty to ensure the best consideration unless there's an appropriate exclusion. The key risk here is inconsistent or unclear decision making, and that's why we've got these updated policies, and that's what this is designed to address. So by adopting them, we ensure a clear framework, a reduced risk of challenge, and a strong audit trail. So in conclusion, they provide a modernised, clear, fit-for-purpose framework managing the council's land property assets. They balance the need to deliver best value with the opportunity to deliver community benefits, and therefore I recommend this to Cabinet colleagues that we approve the revised joint property asset disposal policy, we improve the revised community asset transfer policy, and we agree the delegated authority for minor amendments as set out in the report.
I'm seconding. Oh, all right. I'm just going to say it all sounds very sensible, and I'm very happy to second it. But
Go ahead, Councillor.
Is there anything officers would want to add at this point?
No, thank you, Chair. It's you covered that very well. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Any questions or debate?
Just really briefly to say this is a very useful tidy up exercise. I don't want to minimise it. This will become increasingly important. That some or parts of this may well be used by the successor authority, where there has to be a review of property assets. I mean, it goes back sometime 2021. Was it when the policy was first put forward? So I think we're time for a bit of a review anyway to make sure that it's working clearly in areas that it was not. So it is, exactly an updated version, as you said.
And with LGR and Section 24 coming down the road, this makes up we're in the right place to address that.
Yeah, I'm wondering how well we can publicise this with parish councils if they've got interest in bits of. There was a scheme about 20 years ago where the council offloaded quite a lot of little bits of land and were quite proactive in doing so. We've got the opportunity now to let parish councils know that we've got a simplified system. So if they're interested, contact us.
Yeah, well, that's a way that individual councils could approach it in their ward. But beware, I'm sure officers don't want a hugely increased workload at the time their workload is massively increasing anyway. But yes, this is one of our responsibilities as councils. We can go and publicise that. Any further comments or debate? No? Can I see all in favour of adopting this policy? That is unanimous. Thank you. I believe, I'm just going to check with Becky. Have we covered every item of business?
Yeah, our conversation minutes will be down here.
Right, so meeting closed.
Well done.